This is more than a show. It's the Great British Shooting Show, the biggest celebration of shooting in the UK, bar none. From airguns to optics, country style to sport, it's where every shooter belongs. 3 incredible days, from the 13th to the 15th of February 2026 at the NEC Birmingham. No distractions, just the very best of British shooting and beyond, all under one roof. Book now at shootingshow.co.uk.
Hi, Gary Chillingworth here for Airgun World Magazine, Shooting and Country TV. Welcome to Back to Basics with Daystate. Today's video is all about pellet perfection and how pellets can improve or ruin your life. It's amazing to me that we spend thousands upon thousands of pounds on very, very high-end air rifles, thousands on good quality scopes, and it's all to chuck tiny little bits of lead downrange. And a lot of us don't even think about the lead that we're using. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at ballistic coefficient. We're going to look at the different types of pellets. We're going to look about how to get the best pellets for your rifle and how getting the wrong pellet can be catastrophic to your day's shooting. Welcome to Life at the Range. Welcome to Back to Basics with Daystate, and welcome to Pellet Perfection. Okay, so here we have the humble airgun pellet. We all know them, we all love them. These particular ones are Sovereigns. I think they're the Daystate's own brand. Very, very good pellet, and they weigh 8.44 grain and they come in tins of 500. These particular ones are 177 and doesn't actually say what the head size is on these. But some you can get 452s, 453s, 451s, 450s in different brands of pellet. Now, what sort of pellet should you use? If you go online, if you go onto any of the manufacturers' websites, you will see a plethora of different pellets. There's going to be lots of P's in this video. You can get ones with cross heads, ones with flat heads, ones with pointy bits. If you're old like me and you've got a gat gun, you can probably shoot a dart. So what should you use? Well, it all depends what you want. If you get the ones with the cross heads, apparently when they go into quarry, they expand. When you get the ones with the pointed ends, apparently they're more efficient through the air. There are lots of different claims and lots of different things you can buy. And I'm not going to criticise anything because I've never ever used those type of pellets. I'm not a hunter. I don't know if these things expand. I don't really know if the pointed ones are more efficient through the air and got better BC. All I know is that whenever I go onto an HFT or FT competition, everybody is using what we would call a Diablo style pellet. That's a domed pellet because they appear to give shooters the best accuracy. Most people use 844 grain. Some people use 7.9, and the theory of that is if the pellet is moving faster, it's cutting through the wind better. Personally, I've always found shooting express pellets, these really light pellets, problematic. But then again, I'm not particularly good at reading the wind. The theory is if the pellet is moving faster, it's less time in the air for the wind to move it. But obviously, if that pellet is lighter, it's easier to be moved by the wind. Same theory with some people who use heavy pellets, like your 10 grain pellets. They say, well, they're more stable in the wind. But my view is that a wind is a very powerful force and a tiny little airgun pellet isn't. So I like the consistency of an 844 grain pellet. Also, with your standard 844, there is a much wider range of pellet you can get. As I said, you can get different head sizes. There are lots of different batch numbers. So you can actually fine tune your pellet to your rifle. So personally, for me, I've always stuck with a standard 844 grain pellet, and it's worked for me. And most of the shooters that I know who are much, much better than me do the same. So sometimes it's not a great idea to buck the trend. If there are lots of experienced people doing the same thing, they've put in the work. So I would keep looking at an 844, at least to start with. Okay, well, we're only heading out onto the range in a little while, and we're going to be talking about ballistic coefficient. And one of the things you can use is this, a chronograph. And that will help you test your BC. And basically that is how efficient your pellet is downrange. At the barrel, it might be coming at 800 feet per second, but by the time a good pellet might be doing 630 feet per second at 45 yards, a bad pellet might be travelling at 580. And as such, that means the drop is going to be considerably more. But what's more important than that is pellet weight. Now, these pellets are 844 grain. That does not mean that every pellet in the tin is going to be 844 grain. And no matter what type of pellets you buy, unless you buy the ones that are hand picked and hand weighed, if you just buy a standard tin of pellets, you're going to get everything from, say, 835 to 855 grain of pellet. And that's not really a huge issue. Now, if you set your gun up for 844 and you're shooting at 45 yards, the difference in drop, if it's an 855 pellet, 855 grain pellet, might be an extra pellet width. And you're right, that might be the difference between a kill and a splitter. However, this is where it can get you into trouble. When you go up to the chronograph in a competition and they will ask you the weight of the pellet. So I walk up and I've not weighed my pellets and I say to them 844 grain, and the pellet I take out of my pouch is actually 835. So this rifle chucks this measured amount of air behind the pellet and the pellet comes flying out the barrel and it goes through the chronograph. Now, if I'd have had an 844 pellet and I'd set it up to run at 798 feet per second and that's 11.9 foot-pounds, so it's legal, and it's an 835 grain pellet, that will go through the chronograph faster. There is less mass for the air to push, so the pellet is going to travel faster. Equal amount of mass going that way. If you're pushing a bowling ball or you're pushing a tennis ball, the bowling ball is going to go slower than the tennis ball if you use the same amount of push. Same with this. So I've come up to the chronograph. Unbeknownst to me, I've got a light pellet. I've put it in the breech. I've fired it through the chronograph and the chronograph has read 805 feet per second. I've now failed the chronograph. I've got 2 more attempts to go through, both of which I have got to pass. This is where it gets you into trouble. If you run your gun close to the 12 foot-pound limit and you don't weigh your pellets and you pick a pellet out and you put it in and you go through, you're going to fail the chronograph. You've then got to pass it 2 more times. So that's why it's important to weigh your pellets in competition, so that you know that you've got 30 or 40 pellets that all weigh around about 844 grain. I have a tendency to I use anything from about 842 to 848 when I'm shooting a PCP. Right, okay, so our first thing that we're going to look at is damaged skirts. So let's just stick a mark down there to aim at. We'll go just to the right hand side. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a pellet and we're going to give it a little squeeze so it's now oval. We'll put a picture up and let's see. So it's firing off. Oh yeah, I need to cock it. You see I've not been well. Put that in and you can automatically feel that the rifle doesn't really want to grip the pellet. So we'll put that in. Doesn't want to go in. Go in. There we go. We'll push that forward and you can feel a bit of resistance as it gets pushed in. So let's see where this goes.
Didn't make virtually any difference. Let's do it again. Oh, so we've properly squeezed that one. Right. I think I might have overdone that. Right, go on, get in there. Right, this one will definitely, I think. I mean, that was a properly deformed pellet. You just throw it on the ground. Okay, so massive drop. But that was a properly squashed pellet. Let's give it a... There you go, that one's just a little bit of a dent. Put that in. I'm not surprised that dropped because the pellet was squashed, the air would be escaping past the pellet as it was going down the barrel. And as the pellet came out, it would be destabilized. Also, it would have lost quite a lot of its velocity. That's why it's dropped, because it didn't have the full amount of air pushing behind it. I reckon this one will be okay. We're aiming again at the top mark. Okay, that one hit high. So, I think we've proved that even if there is a slight amount of damage to the pellet, or the pellet skirt, the pellet's going to fly. So let's now put down another marker, and then we're going to damage the head. A little marker down there. We go again to the right hand side. Is it that one? Right, so here we have a pellet. I'll put a picture up. We've actually got damage to the head of the pellet. So again, looking at the mark we just put down. And there we go. We've gone flying off to the right hand side. So that's gone to show that if you've got damage to the skirt or damage to the head, you're always going to have an inaccurate pellet. Okay, our third one is, will it affect your accuracy if you put your pellet in your mouth? Now, I'm a train driver, and as such we have to have regular blood tests and stuff like that to make sure we don't take any kind of innocuous substances. And rightfully so. Just going to put a marker down. And on one of my times that I went to go and see my my doctor, he said to me, fisherman or airgun shooter? And I went, airgun shooter, why? He says, stop putting the pellets in your mouth because the lead is showing up in your bloodstream. So don't put your pellets in your mouth. But what I've got here is a tin full of spit and a pellet covered in spit. My spit. The things I do for research. So will a spit covered pellet fly straight? I don't think it will affect it. Okay, fractionally to the right hand side, but that could be wind. Ugh. This one, the cavity is full of spit. Oh. This is horrible. Okay, aiming at the left hand side hole. Yep, that's fine. If anything, I think they're flying better. Oh. Oh. Okay, we could do one more, but I'm not going to because it's disgusting. Yeah, so spit covered pellets, yeah, it's not going to affect your accuracy putting it in your mouth. Just don't do it, because it will end up showing up in your bloodstream, and lead and blood and brain, no worky goody, because you'll end up like me. So we've looked to damage the skirts, we've looked to damage the heads, both of which affected the pellet. We looked at spit, not really affected the pellet. And now what we're going to do is we're going to look at drop. So we're going to look at BC, whether or not an efficient pellet in your barrel is better than an inefficient pellet in your barrel, which I know is a ridiculous statement, but you'll understand what I'm talking about in a minute. Okay, so here we are, day 2. I filmed this yesterday, this whole section on ballistic coefficient, and I had lots of graphs and there were cameras set up and it looked great, and I filmed it and then I edited it last night, and even I did not understand what, sorry, the monk jack just walked past, and even I filmed it and I wrote it, I didn't understand it, I was getting confused. So today's a much more simplified version of why ballistic coefficient is so important. So we've got 2 pellets. We've got 4.52s, which I know that this rifle really likes, and 4.53s, which I know that it doesn't. Now, if I'm sitting here and I'm in competition and there's that target sitting out there and I don't know how far away it is, I'm going to look through my rifle. That's 0.6 of a mil dot. The problem is a 30mm at 40 yards is 0.6 of a mil dot, top to bottom, side to side. A 35mm target at 45 yards is, answers on a postcard, email, 0.6 of a millimetre. So you don't know by measuring the kill zone how far away it is. So I'm going to head bob it. Unfortunately, because it's really bright out here and really dark in there, head bob isn't working. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the history. I was hoping that all of the misses were either going to be underneath the kill zone or in the bottom half of the paddle, which would tell me it's near a 45, or all above the kill zone or at the top of the paddle, telling me it's 40. But there's only been one person who shot it before, and unfortunately that was Jeff Ryder, and he completely missed the target. So I've now got to do what a lot of HFT shooters do. I've got to hedge my bets. So what I'm going to try and do is put my 40-yard aim point as high in the kill as I can, and hoping that if I've got it completely wrong, it will also drop in the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our efficient pellets first, and this is the target at 45 yards. Okay, so the thing you need to know about airgun pellets is the very second they leave the barrel, they start to drop. So if this is your 40-yard aim point and this is your 45-yard target, what you want is the least amount of drop between those two. Now my best pellets drop about 25mm between my 40-yard aim point and my 45-yard target. So why is that important? Well, if this is our 35mm kill zone, and as we've discussed before, we can't tell whether or not that is a 30mm at 40 yards or a 35mm at 45 yards, because they're both 0.6 of a mil dot. We want to be able to put both our 40-yard aim point and our 45-yard aim point in the kill. But obviously, if we've got an inefficient pellet that has got a drop between there and there, which is, let's say, 33mm, I've got to go high in the kill, right there, with the hope that I'm going to drop in right there. But that distance there and that distance there is tiny, because if we've got winds coming from that way,
I've got to be absolutely spot on with my windage. If I'm 5mm out, I'm splitting there. If I give it too little, if I give it fractionally too much, I'm there. Same goes at the bottom. However, if we've got a more efficient pellet with, say, a 20mm drop, because it's got a good BC, I can put my 40 yard there, and the maximum it's going to drop out is there. And I've got this huge, nice big fat area to aim at for the wind. So that is a good BC pellet. Gives us that huge advantage of getting in that section of the kill. Now, how do you find if you've got a good BC on a pellet? Well, that's simple. You take a piece of paper, you draw a nice big fat line on it. You put this out at 45 yards. You put your 40 yard aim point at that pellet and you see where the pellet lands. That's where your pellet lands, and you measure there to there. And you're hoping that that's going to be about 20mm. That's an efficient pellet. If you put your 40 yard aim point there and it drops all the way down here, and that distance is, say, 38mm, that's inefficient. Because if you don't know the range of this target, if you put your 40 there and you've got it wrong and it's 45, you're at the bottom of the kill. So this is why getting an efficient pellet for your barrel is so important, and it's so simple to do. Draw your line, put your target out at 45 yards, pick a windless day, put your 40 yard aim point there and see where the pellet hits. Obviously do 2 or 3, because that will prove whether or not it's doing the same thing every time. And then the very second you know that you've got a good batch of pellets that your gun likes, you go and buy as many of that batch as you possibly can. That's BC in a nutshell, and I hope this is the last time I have to explain this, because it's driving me crazy. Okay, so a lot of people will talk about preparing their pellets. Now, the way pellets are made is they are created by, essentially there's a long spool of wire that goes through a die and punches out the pellets. And to make sure that the pellets leave the die, they use a release agent, a lubrication. And these can sit on the pellets. Now, if you leave these for years and years and years, you get this thing called oxidization. And you'll notice that the pellets look a little bit grey. Some people will say the pellets are a little bit hard. And you shouldn't put them through your barrel. I must admit, I don't use them in competition, but if I've got a tin of pellets that have gone grey and they're a bit old, I just use them for standing practices. Trust me, nothing is going to make a difference to my standing shots. But a lot of people like to wash, dry and lubricate their pellets. And a few people have asked, how do you do this to get consistency? The way that I was always shown how to clean and wash my pellets is to take a small jar, fill it with warm water and use car shampoo. If you use something like Fairy Liquid is very good at cleaning dishes because it's got salt in it. And the salt in Fairy Liquid could end up getting on your pellets, and then that could be transferred into the barrel of your rifle. And salt and metal, not particularly good. Car shampoo does not have salt in it. So that's why I was always told to use car shampoo. So take some pellets, we just take a small handful and drop them in the jar. And then sit down while you're having a cup of tea, just swirling them about like this. Just in the bottom of the car, just in the bottom of the jar. And you can already see that you've got a certain amount of rubbish coming off the pellets. Not a lot, and personally, I've never really bothered washing pellets. I've always found if you get a good quality pellet, you know, basically if you chuck all the pellets in your hand and you look at the tin, look at that. That's as clean as anything, and these pellets have been in here for a long time. So if the pellets have not transferred any of their release agent to the tin, you've got a clean pellet. However, there are some manufacturers of pellets who use a very heavy release agent, And the pellets come out like they've got half a gallon of crude oil on them, so they need to be cleaned. But look on the inside of your pellet. If it's clean as a whistle, I wouldn't really bother. So, oh, by the way, this is very nice marmalade. So you give that a little swirl around, make sure they're clean. And then what you do is you realise there's no way of getting them out without getting water all over the place. So I'm gonna fake it. So these are our wet pellets. So put them out onto a cloth. Take your hairdryer, give them a dry, and make sure that they are completely dry. And look on the inside of the cavity there to make sure that there is no water left inside the cavity of the pellet. Some people put them on a baking sheet. Don't use your wife's best baking sheet that's done the roast potatoes, because the oil will transfer onto the pellets. I don't like a baking sheet, I prefer a hairdryer. And they put them in the oven for about 100 degrees for about, sort of low, and they leave them in there for about an hour, and they come out nice and dry. So then, once your pellets are dry, take yourself a tiny little bag, put your pellets in your tiny little bag, and then you take your lubricant. I've been looking all over for my Napier lube and I can't find it, so I've got some. I'll tell you what, never ever use 3-in-1 to lubricate your pellets. Couple of drops of your lubricant. Napier lube is what a lot of people use. LT1 is a good one. So literally 2 or 3 drops into a bag, close your bag, do them about 50 at a time, and then just roll the pellets around, making sure that they're all coated and nice. And that will give you a nice even coat of lubrication over your pellets. But say, don't use 3-in-1, don't use crisp and dry, use Napier pellet lube, LT1. I'm sure there are other very, very good ones, but use a bespoke pellet lubrication if you're going to lube your pellets. So you just keep on rolling them around, and then you've got a bag of fully lubricated pellets. You can buy these kind of bags on eBay for, you can buy like 200 or 300 bags for a couple of quid. And then what I like to do is I do them in batches of 50 when I used to do it, which I don't anymore, but we already went over that. And I write on there 844 lubricated, washed and cleaned. And then I can keep those in a box so that if I'm shooting in the competition, I know that I've got a bag of 50 weighed, lubricated, salted pellets, and I don't have to worry about it the night before. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Once again, I've been amazed about how accurate this BRK Ghost is with this MTC Connect on top. It's done everything I've needed to, and it's just been absolutely great. So what have we looked at today? Well, we've looked at, is washing and cleaning your pellets important? Weighing them certainly is, but getting the correct pellet for what you want to do and how important that is. We've looked at ballistic coefficient and pellet drop, and I think I've confused myself and probably everybody watching this video. So if your ears are bleeding, I do apologise. It always amazes me with these air guns about what you can actually do with them. And even after shooting for 20 odd years, I still pick up a rifle every now and then and go, yeah, that's just great. And this is one of those rifles that I always pick up and go, yeah, that's just great. Well, I think that's it for today. I hope we've all learned something. I think I certainly have. It's one of these things that pellets I don't really think about that much these days, and I really should think about it more. We'll see you again all very, very soon. We'll see you back on the range. You take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Please visit our sponsor, the Surplus Store in Crawley. Please check out Daystate for all your rifling needs. I think we've got something exciting coming very, very soon. Tony mentioned that he's sending me a care package. He said that he's sending me a Daystate, because so far we've done back to basics with Daystate, and as of yet we've not actually had a Daystate on the channel. Brocock part of Daystate, but we haven't actually had a Daystate, so apparently we're getting a Daystate. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Ta-da!